Hello, it's John Heaton, and this evening I'm going to review this album from Abba, their fifth album, the follow-up to Arrival from 1976. So this album came out in December 1978 in Poland, 77 in Poland, and January 78 in England, because the advance orders were so huge that the pressing plants couldn't get it out in time. So just before I go through the album, I just want to show you a couple of copies of Abba's greatest hits, which I've got, which I thought were quite interesting. This is the one that we're all familiar with in the UK and the US anyway, with the superb, iconic park bench shot of Abba. And then, but the original design, which came out in several European countries, was this quite amusing cartoon picture. The US and the UK said it was not acceptable, but actually the inside was the UK US cover. And then this isn't quite the same. I'm sure what, I think this is a German greatest hits, but it seems to be a bit earlier and it's actually a double album, but actually it includes the park bench shot, but a slightly different shot from the same session if you look closely. So that's that. I thought that was quite interesting. So this album, Abba the album, was kind of coming on the back of a film, or came out roughly the same time as Abba the movie, which was a film about their tour of Australia, and it's not much of a plot line, and most of the movie is just journalists chasing the band around the country and interspersed with video footage of them performing on stage. So as a movie, not much, but as a music documentary, quite enjoyable. I don't watch it that often. I prefer the actual promo videos that Abba did, which are still to this day among the best in the music industry ever. In my opinion. So, and then continuing with the theme, perhaps, although this came out later, Abba the book, which is a very nice book of colour photos and stories, including this is an outtake from the Voulez-Vous cover session, and there's loads of interesting stuff in here. The text is probably not as interesting as the pictures, but or the music. But that's the way with Abba, I guess, that their strength is in their music, and the books that have been written about them don't really dwell on anything other than their music and their success, and they don't really talk about anything sensational or anything dodgy which happened on tour. They, after all, were quite a clean band in that respect, although both marriages split up eventually, of course. So the US and the UK changed the cover a bit from the Swedish cover. So this Swedish album had this inner picture of the band with the lyrics, and it's on the Swedish Polar label. And Epic, who controlled the US and the UK Abba releases, said, well, why don't we do a gatefold, and we'll put this cover on the back, this picture on the back. We'll make it blue at the top to make it look like a sky, I guess, and then have this rather nice gatefold, which looks a bit like an airmail letter, with the lyrics there. And so this is the design I grew up with, although the CD, this is on the Epic orange label, the CD restores the original artwork. Here, no bonus tracks on this edition, although I hear there is a Spanish version of Move On released somewhere, but I don't have it. So to this album, I think this is a really strong album. It's almost as good as Arrival, which is probably my favourite Abba album. Those two, I think, are probably the strongest two Abba albums for me. Opens with Eagle, which is a majestic opener, maybe not the most commercial, poppy opener for an album, but they did a great video to go with this, and it's quite a moody minor key song, and I love it. It's followed by the first, or I think it was the second hit single off the album, Take a Chance on Me, which was a huge hit in the UK. I remember it in February 78, and I actually picked up the single. I didn't actually buy the album for quite a few years for some reason. I have rectified that now. I have 2 copies plus the CD, but I was given the Name of the Game single for Christmas '77 by my parents, together with my first ever record player, which I shared with my brother and sister. So, having bought the second single, I probably thought, well, we don't need the album, which was wrong, because I think there's some great stuff on the album which is not available on the 4 tracks on those 2 singles. But anyway, Take a Chance on Me is a great pop song, great harmonies, particularly in the intro of the song, and a great video to go with it, as always. A well-deserved #1 smash hit in the UK, at least, and most of Europe. In the US, Abba were less successful, but this album, I think, was their breakthrough, although Dancing Queen was probably their biggest hit, single-wise. Then the album continues with One Man, One Woman. Again, they made a video for this, even though it wasn't a single, and it's a sublime song. The lyrics are quite sentimental and not that deep, perhaps, but none the worse for that. I think it's a moving song with a nice sentiment. And although it wasn't to come true for the 2 guys who wrote the song, because both Bjorn and Agnetha's marriage was to split up about 2 years after this album came out, and Benny and Frida were to follow maybe a year or 18 months after that. So a bit sad, but Name of the Game was a huge #1 single in the UK, November '77, with another great video to go with it. It's a minor key song in the verse, with a superb change to the major in the chorus, and just lovely chord changes, lovely singing from the girls, and great musicianship from Abba, not just the 4 main members, but Roger Gunnarsson, who plays bass on most of the Abba records, and Ola Brunkat, who plays drums, and a guy called Roger Palm also plays drums, and most of the lead guitar work is a guy called Lasse Wellander, and a guy called Jan Schaffer on Eagle. Benny plays acoustic guitar, and Benny Anderson handles all the keyboard work. So when you see videos of them, you see the 4 main guys up front, and then if you look at the back, you can often see Roger Gunnarsson on his bass, and Ola Brunket on drums towards the back, kind of in the shade of the video or the TV shows that they were doing. Maybe not so much in the videos, but in the TV, certainly in the Japan TV show, you can see them. So the Name of the Game, an absolutely outstanding closer to side 1, one of their best ever tracks. By the way, I was reading Abba the movie, the premiere in London, Leicester Square, was attended by no less than 3 members of The Who. John Entwistle, Pete Townsend and Keith Moon. And this book actually has quite a few tributes to Abba from various groups, and people like Tim Rice and Tina Turner and Bjork and The Edge from U2, Andy Bell from Erasure, just saying that they were brilliant. So I think that they have been reappraised. It wasn't trendy to like them at the time, particularly. Hopefully that's now rectified, because I think that was a little ridiculous. I myself went through a phase of about maybe 2 years of not liking them for that reason when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, which is stupid looking back on it. But ever since the kind of revival of the 90s, when Abba Gold came out, and there was a band, imitation band, I forgot the name of them, I went to see them in London several times, who were brilliant. Never been ashamed since to say that this band is brilliant, and side 2 is perhaps not as strong as side one. It opens with Move On, with this slightly cheesy narrator comments about how I've always tried and stuff, but it's a nice melody and it's well sung and it's catchy and it's inoffensive. Hole in Your Soul is an attempt at doing a more upbeat rocker, and a bit like The Tiger from the previous album. It doesn't really work too well for me. I don't think they're suited best to that style of music, but it's not bad, nothing wrong with it. And then the album finishes with a sort of mini operetta, The Girl with the Golden Hair, featuring 3 little songs joined together, and they're not really little because they're all 3.5, 4.5, and nearly 4 minutes long. So starts off with Thank You for the Music, which in many ways is Abba's theme tune. It's then probably the most well-known song. It gets played time and time again at Christmas parties and stuff, and people rewrite the words to it, and I just think it's brilliant. The tune is superb, and yes, the lyrics are sentimental, but who cares? I love it to bits, and it's a masterpiece. I Wonder, Departure, was the B-side of the Name of the Game single, or at least a live version of it was, and this is a beautiful melody sung by Agnetha, and brilliant. I'm a Marionette, the weakest of the 3. By the way, this marionette here on the cover I spotted. It's okay, but it's a slightly unsatisfactory close to the album, but this is fairly minor criticism. On the whole, this album is very consistent, and not just for the singles. If you could believe it or not, Thank You for the Music wasn't even a single during the band's career while they were together. It was released later, I think, but at the time they were affected by what the critics were saying about Abba, saying they're too sentimental, and they didn't put that out as a single, and if they had, it surely would have been a smash #1 hit. And there's other album tracks on most Abba albums which you could say the same of. One Man, One Woman here, My Love, My Life from Arrival, Why Did It Have to Be Me from Arrival, just As Good as New from Voulez-Vous. Just the album tracks which really you don't get to hear if you only buy ABBA Gold or ABBA Greatest Hits. So I've always preferred the albums of this band, and this is one of their best. Thank you for watching. See you next time.